Guilty. The word detonated through the courtroom like a bullet. Sarah Monroe didn't flinch, but her fingers dug into the edge of the defendant's table until her knuckles turned white. The air felt thin, like she was breathing through glass. The judge's voice was steady, practiced, the voice of a man who'd said these words too many times to too many people. Sarah Monroe, you have been found guilty of first-degree murder and obstruction of justice. You are hereby sentenced to death by lethal injection. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Somewhere behind her, someone sobbed. Sarah didn't turn around. She already knew who it was. Her sister, Rebecca, the only family member who still believed her. Her knees buckled as the gavel came down. Life over. The bailiff reached for her arms. "Ma'am, I need you to stand." Sarah's body obeyed, even though her soul didn't. The sound of the cuffs clicking shut around her wrists echoed like thunder inside her skull. She stared ahead, not at the crowd, not at the cameras, but at the prosecutor, a tall man with eyes too satisfied for someone who claimed to believe in justice. She whispered under her breath, more to herself than anyone else, "I didn't kill him." He heard her, smirked. "The jury thinks otherwise, Mrs. Monroe." They always did. Poor women didn't get grace, especially not ones who used to work in hospitals and knew how to handle syringes, the same kind of syringe they said she'd used to kill her employer. The world blurred. Reporters shouted her name. Flashbulbs burst like lightning, but all she could think was, "This can't be happening." The hallway outside the courtroom was colder than she expected. Two officers led her down a long corridor, their boots echoing against the marble floor. Her mind wasn't here. It was 20 years ago. A storm, a baby's cry, a decision she should never have made but could never regret. "Ma'am, keep walking," the bailiff said softly, almost kindly. She looked at him through tear-fogged eyes. "Do you have children?" He hesitated. "2 boys." "Then you know," she said, her voice trembling, "if you hear a baby crying in the dark, you don't walk away." He frowned, not understanding, not yet. But that was the night everything changed. That was the night she became a mother to a stranger's baby and unknowingly sealed her own fate. Hey, my friend, hope you're doing well. Drop a comment and let me know how you're feeling about this story so far and where you're watching from. Some stories are too close to my heart to share on YouTube, and I send those, along with little life lessons and surprises, to my email circle. If you'd like to be part of it, you can join with the link in the description. In the back of the courtroom, someone else had been watching. A man in a dark suit, his expression unreadable. He stayed seated long after everyone else had left, eyes fixed on the spot where Sarah had stood moments earlier. His fingers tapped against his knee, rhythmic and deliberate, like he was remembering something or someone. When the room was finally empty, he whispered under his breath, "She saved me." Then he walked out. The countdown to redemption had already begun.
20 years before the verdict, the night sky tore open above New Orleans like it was angry. The rain was merciless, washing away everything that wasn't mailed down. And for a moment, Sarah Monroe thought it might wash her away too. She was driving home from the night shift at St. Catherine's Hospital, exhausted, her scrubs soaked through from a broken umbrella. Her whole life was about trying to stay afloat. Double shifts, overdue rent, and a husband who hadn't come home in 3 days. The radio buzzed with static until she turned it off. Silence was better. Then, the cry. It was faint at first, almost swallowed by the storm. But once she heard it, she couldn't unhear it. A baby's cry. She slammed the brakes. Her headlights caught something at the edge of the road. An overturned car, steam rising from its hood, glass scattered like diamonds across the asphalt. Sarah's heart pounded. She jumped out, slipping in the mud as thunder rattled the sky. "Hello? Is anyone?" Another cry, sharper this time. The back seat. She yanked the door open and froze. A baby, maybe 6 months old, wrapped in a blood-stained blanket, wailing. No sign of the driver. No one else in sight. Oh my God. Her training kicked in. She checked the baby's breathing, pulse, reflexes, all there, just terrified. "Shh, hey, it's okay," she whispered, holding the tiny bundle close. Lightning flashed, revealing something in the passenger seat. A woman slumped forward, unmoving. She reached in, fingers trembling. Cold skin, no pulse. She stumbled back, rain mixing with tears. Oh, Lord. Her car was still running. The baby wouldn't stop crying. She should have called the police, the hospital, someone, but something inside her froze. She thought of her own miscarriage 2 years ago, the baby she'd lost, the emptiness that had followed. And then, for reasons she couldn't explain, she whispered, "I've got you. You're safe now." That was the first lie she ever told. She told herself she'd take the baby to the hospital once the storm cleared. But when morning came and the news announced that both passengers in the wreck had died, a woman and her infant son, Sarah just stood in her kitchen holding that tiny boy and said nothing. She buried the lie with the mother. The boy grew up with her name, Ethan Monroe. And for 20 years, she kept her secret buried under ordinary life, PTA meetings, scraped knees, birthday cakes, school plays. He called her Mom. She called him Miracle. But every miracle demands a price. The first crack appeared when he was 16. He'd been digging through the attic looking for old photos for a school project when he found something wrapped in yellowed newspaper, a silver baby bracelet engraved with the name Liam Cross. He brought it downstairs, smiling. "Mom, who's Liam?" The question nearly made her drop the coffee mug. "What?" "This bracelet. It was in a box with baby clothes. Is that like a cousin or something?" She stared at him, her heart racing. "Put that away, honey. It's from the hospital. I used to work there. I kept things that got left behind." He frowned, confused but trusting. "That's kind of weird, Mom." "I know," she said too quickly. "Just don't mention it again." That was the second lie. And just like that, the truth began clawing its way back to the surface. 2 weeks later, she found an envelope slipped under her door. No return address. Inside, a single Polaroid photo of a burned-out car. The same crash site where she'd found the baby. Scrawled on the back, "I know what you did." Her world cracked. She sat on her couch, staring at the photo for hours, her breath coming in shallow bursts. Who could have known? She told no one, not even her sister. The phone rang. She jumped. It was the hospital. They needed someone to cover an emergency night shift. She said yes, anything to keep moving, to stay distracted. But when she arrived at St. Catherine's, she saw a familiar face waiting at the ER desk, Detective Alan Pierce. He'd investigated that crash 2 decades ago. Back then, he'd looked younger, sharper, less tired. But those eyes, calculating, cold, hadn't changed. "Long time, Nurse Monroe," he said. Her stomach sunk. What are you doing here?" "Routine follow-up on an old case. You remember a woman named Emily Cross?" I forced myself to nod. "The car accident?" "Yeah. We never found the baby." His gaze was too direct. Funny thing, though, the child's birth bracelet went missing from the evidence locker. Turns out it was last signed out by a nurse named Sarah Monroe. I felt the room spinning. I don't know what you're implying. He smiled slightly. I'm not implying anything. Yet. Then he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You ever hear of the phrase, sins find their way home? I stared at him, my pulse hammering. That night, I drove home in silence, every shadow on the road looking like a ghost. When I stepped through my front door, Ethan was at the kitchen table doing homework. He looked up, smiling. Hey, Mom. And that was the moment I realized the past wasn't gone. It was sitting right in front of me. And one day, it would destroy us both.
It began with a phone call that came at 2:14 a.m., the kind of call that tears your life in half. Sarah was asleep when Ethan's voice came through, trembling. Mom, I hit something. She sat up, heart racing. What do you mean you hit something? I don't know. I was driving back from Nolan's party. It was raining and dark and... His voice cracked. I think it was a person. She froze. Ethan, where are you right now? The old bridge road near the riverbank. I'm coming. Don't move. She didn't even put on shoes. She just grabbed her car keys and drove. The storm outside had returned like a curse, rain hammering the windshield as if the heavens wanted to drown her. When she reached the bridge, she saw his car at the shoulder, headlights still on. Ethan stood in front of it, pale and shaking. On the wet road lay a man, motionless. Oh, God, Sarah gasped. Ethan, what did you... He came out of nowhere, he stammered. I didn't see him. I swear, Mom, I didn't. She crouched beside the man, checking for a pulse. Nothing. His skin was already cold. The impact had broken his neck instantly. Sarah stared at the lifeless body, her mind spinning. She looked up at her son, her miracle, shaking and sobbing in the rain. And she knew what she was about to do. Get in the car. What? Now, Ethan. Her voice was firm, calm, the same tone she used to soothe patients before surgery. Go home. Pack a bag. Say nothing. Do not answer the door if anyone knocks. Mom, what are you... Go. He hesitated, terrified, then obeyed. When his taillights disappeared into the storm, Sarah took a deep breath and looked down at the man again. His wallet had fallen out. She picked it up, opened it, and froze. Detective Alan Pierce. Her blood turned to ice. The man who'd threatened her. The man who knew the truth about Ethan. He'd followed her. And now he was dead. By dawn, the police were already at her door. She'd cleaned the car, burned her clothes, done everything her panicked mind could manage. But they knew. They always knew. Her fingerprints were on the scene. Her hospital syringes were later found in her car. The man's blood on her sleeve. It all fit perfectly. Mrs. Monroe, the detective in charge, said as they cuffed her, "You have the right to remain silent." She wanted to scream, to explain, but Ethan stood frozen in the hallway, eyes wide, unable to move. Mom? Go inside, she whispered. The neighbors watched as they led her away. At the station, the interrogation felt like a slow death. They showed her photos of the scene, the syringe, the body. You expect us to believe this was an accident? The prosecutor asked. You had motive. He'd been investigating you. He'd found the truth about your son. Sarah stared at him numb. I didn't kill him. He leaned back. Then who did? She looked down at her hands, the same hands that had delivered babies, comforted the dying, held her son. If she told them the truth, that Ethan had been the one driving, she'd save herself, but she'd destroy him. So she said the words that sealed her fate. I did. The trial moved fast, too fast. The media painted her as the manipulative nurse who'd kidnapped a baby, killed a detective, and lived a lie for 20 years. Ethan testified only once, shaking, barely able to speak. The lawyers tore him apart, painting him as a victim of a mother's obsession. When the gavel came down with the word guilty, she didn't cry. She just stared at her son and whispered, "Don't look back." He didn't. But fate wasn't finished with either of them. 2 months later, as she sat behind prison bars awaiting appeal, a guard handed her a letter. No return address, just one sentence. He knows the truth, and he's coming for you. She didn't understand what it meant, not yet. But outside those walls, Ethan Monroe, now Liam Cross, was beginning to remember the life that had been stolen from him.
6 months into her sentence, the walls of Holbrook Women's Correctional Facility began to whisper. Whispers in prison were like smoke. They slipped through cracks, carried secrets, and choked you if you breathed too deep. Sarah had learned to keep her head down. Her world had shrunk to a 6x8 cell, 2 metal bunks, and a single window the size of a shoebox. Every morning she woke to the same gray light, the same clang of the meal cart, the same ache in her chest where freedom used to live. But that morning, something was different. Her cellmate, Marla, sharp-tongued, tattooed, dangerous, slid a folded note beneath her tray. Sarah frowned. "What's this?" Marla leaned in. "From someone on the outside. Said it's urgent." Sarah hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single line written in block letters. "Do not trust the lawyer. He works for them." Her stomach knotted. Her appeal hearing was in 2 weeks, and her lawyer, Robert Hale, had promised her a miracle. Now she wasn't sure if she was walking into salvation or a setup. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan, now 20 years old, was spiraling. He changed his name legally to Liam Cross, the name on that baby bracelet. He dropped out of college, moved into a cheap apartment, and spent sleepless nights digging through public records, police reports, and sealed court files that shouldn't have existed. Every discovery felt like a betrayal written in ink. He found his birth certificate, his real mother's death record, her car accident photos, and buried deep in a police database a line that shattered him completely. Infant recovered, deceased at scene. Except he wasn't. Someone had declared him dead to hide him, and the only person who could have done that was Sarah Monroe. One evening, he sat in the dim light of his apartment, the old silver bracelet spinning between his fingers. He whispered to the empty room, "Why did you lie to me?" There was no answer, just the sound of rain against the window, the same sound that had filled the night she saved him. He'd promised himself he'd never set foot in that prison, but promises meant nothing now. He needed the truth. Visitation day. Sarah hadn't seen him in nearly a year. When he walked in, older, harder, his eyes no longer carried the warmth she'd raised him with. "Liam," she breathed, standing as the guard opened the door. He didn't hug her, just sat down across the glass. "Don't call me that. My name's Liam." She swallowed hard. "I know. You knew it all, didn't you? Who I was, where I came from, the woman who died in that car. She was my mother." Tears welled in her eyes. "You were dying, Liam. You were cold and blue, and there was no one else." "You stole my life," his voice cracked. "You buried me so you could have a son. You built everything on a lie."
The guard shifted nervously, but Sarah didn't move. "You think I don't wake up every night hearing that baby cry? I saved you because I couldn't save mine." He leaned back, trembling with rage and heartbreak. "You let them kill you for me." "I chose that," she said, "and I'd choose it again." He stood abruptly, signaling the end of the visit. As he turned to leave, she pressed her hand against the glass. "Ethan!" He froze. "You may hate me, but you're still my miracle." He didn't look back. Outside, as he stepped into the cold air, a man approached him, mid-40s, clean-cut, carrying a briefcase. "Liam Cross?" Liam turned warily. "Who's asking?" "Robert Hale, your mother's attorney." The man's tone was warm, practiced, almost paternal. "She asked me to reach out. There are developments in her case." "I'm not interested." "Oh, I think you will be," Hale said, lowering his voice. "There's evidence that could clear her name, but we'll need your help." "What kind of evidence?" "Something she hid. Something only you can find." He handed Liam a card and walked away before he could ask more. When he looked down at it, he saw something scribbled in ink on the back, a single address. Pier 19, Storage Unit 47. The same pier where Detective Pierce had died. That night, Liam drove there. The air was heavy with fog, the pier's wooden boards creaking under his boots. The storage units loomed like coffins in the dark. Unit 47 was locked with a heavy padlock, but when he looked closer, it was already broken. Someone had been here before him. Inside, the smell of oil and salt water filled the air. Cardboard boxes lined the walls. He opened the nearest one and found old hospital files and photos. Photos of the crash, of the baby, of him. He turned over one of the pictures and froze. There was writing on the back, a single name. Hale, his mother's lawyer. A shadow moved behind him. He spun, but it was too late. A blow to the head sent him crashing to the ground. The last thing he heard before everything went black was a voice, low and cold. "You should have stayed dead." Back in her cell, Sarah couldn't sleep. Something in her chest twisted, that ancient mother's instinct that screamed when her child was in danger. Marla stirred on the top bunk. "You okay?" Sarah whispered, "No, something's wrong." The next morning, when the guards came for roll call, Sarah was gone, and so was her cellmate. A broken lock lay on the floor.
The morning news hit like a bomb. 2 inmates escaped from Holbrook Women's Correctional Facility. One identified as Sarah Monroe, convicted murderer awaiting execution. Liam's eyes fluttered open in a hospital bed, the taste of blood in his mouth, a pounding ache behind his eyes. The nurse leaned over him. "You're lucky someone found you, sweetheart. Head trauma, but no fracture." He groaned, trying to sit up. Where's my phone?" "Police took it, said they'll be back with questions." He tried to piece it together, the pier, the photos, the blow to his head. Then it hit him. Hale. His mother's lawyer wasn't trying to help her. He'd set them both up. He yanked the IV out, ignoring the nurse's protests, and stumbled out of bed. He had to find her before they did. 3 towns away, Sarah and Marla crouched in the back of a stolen delivery truck. The rain outside was relentless, almost mocking her, as if the sky remembered that first storm 20 years ago. Marla lit a cigarette, the glow reflecting in her eyes. "You sure about this, lady? Most people break out to run. You're breaking out to get caught faster." Sarah stared at her hands. "I'm not running. I'm saving what's left." Marla snorted. "Saving who? That boy who doesn't even want to see you?" Sarah didn't answer. Marla sighed. "You're crazy, you know that." "Maybe. But if you ever had a child, you'd understand. Love makes you do stupid things, brave things, both."
That night, they stopped at a diner off the highway. Sarah sat by the window, her hood pulled low. The news on the TV above the counter replayed her mugshot. Authorities believe Monroe may be attempting to contact her son, Ethan, or Liam Cross, the victim's biological child. Officials warn he may also be in danger. Sarah clenched her jaw. Then she saw him. Across the street, limping slightly, head bandaged. Liam. She stood abruptly. Marla grabbed her wrist. "You sure about this?" "No," Sarah said, tears blurring her eyes. "But it's love." She crossed the street before she could change her mind. He turned as she approached. Their eyes met. "Mom," he whispered. And in that fragile second, they were both just what they'd always been, broken souls trying to find home in each other. But the moment shattered as black SUVs screeched around the corner. "FBI! Hands where we can see 'em!" Sarah grabbed his hand. "Run!" They bolted down the alley as bullets ripped through the night. Marla's voice echoed behind them, a scream, then silence. Sarah and Liam burst through a chain-link fence and stumbled into an abandoned warehouse, gasping for air. Liam turned to her furious. "What the hell is happening?" "Hale. He's not a lawyer. He works for the same people who killed your mother." He froze. "What are you talking about?" "That crash wasn't an accident, Liam. Emily Cross was a whistleblower. She found out her hospital was falsifying drug trials. Hale was part of it. They wanted her silenced." He shook his head. "You're saying she was murdered?" "Yes, they staged the crash. But you survived. I found you before they did." He stared at her, trembling. "So, all this time, you were protecting me?" "I couldn't tell you. If I did, they'd find you." His voice broke. "And Pierce, the detective!" "He found out. He came to me that night to warn me. But when he saw you, he realized the truth. I don't know what happened after. I only found his body." Liam sank to the floor, shaking. "So who killed him?" Sarah looked away. "I don't know. But she did. Somewhere deep down she did. Because that syringe they said was hers, it had her prints, but not her soul. Someone had been in her house. Someone who knew how to make it look like she'd done it." Hours later, while they hid in the shadows, Liam found her staring out a broken window. "You should have told me," he said softly. "I wanted to," she whispered. "Every birthday, every graduation, I wanted to tell you. But then I'd look at you, happy, safe, and I'd think, maybe I can carry this secret a little longer." He sat beside her. "You didn't have to carry it alone." She smiled faintly. "Mothers always do." Then headlights swept across the walls. Sarah's face went pale. "They found us." Liam stood up, pulling her up. "Come on!" But as they turned toward the back exit, a familiar voice echoed through the darkness. "Going somewhere?" Hale stepped out from the shadows, a gun in hand, his expression calm, almost gentle. "Liam," he said smoothly, "she's lying. She's been lying your whole life. You really think this woman didn't kill your mother's investigator?" Liam's grip tightened on Sarah's arm. "Why would you even care?" Hale smirked. "Because she took something that didn't belong to her. You." Then he aimed the gun at Sarah. "And now I'm here to return what's mine." Sarah stepped in front of Liam. "You won't touch him." He cocked the gun. "Oh, Sarah, always the savior." The shot rang out. Liam lunged. There was a struggle, a flash, and then Hale dropped, blood blooming across his shirt. Sarah stood frozen, her hands trembling around the gun. Liam stared at her in shock. "Mom, what did you do?" She looked down at the weapon, her face unreadable. Then, sirens. They were surrounded. She pressed the gun into his hands. "Run!" "No!" "Run!" she shouted, tears streaking down her face. "Don't let this be for nothing."
He hesitated only a second before slipping through the back door. As the SWAT team stormed in, Sarah dropped to her knees, raising her hands, and for the second time in her life, she whispered, "I didn't kill him."
The warehouse lights burned white when the agents swarmed in. Sarah Monroe knelt in the center of the floor, wrists out, face streaked with dirt and tears. The officer reading her rights didn't even raise his voice. He didn't have to. The world had already stopped listening to her. 2 murders, 2 escapes, the headlines screamed by morning. Every channel replayed the same footage, Sarah in chains, expression unreadable, like a ghost that hadn't realized she was dead yet. In the interrogation room, the district attorney dropped a thick file onto the metal table. "Robert Hale, ex-federal consultant. You killed him too, didn't you?" Sarah's eyes were hollow. "You think I have that kind of power?" He leaned closer. "We have the gun. We have your prints." She almost laughed. "You had my prints last time. Didn't make me guilty then either." He smiled thinly. "Maybe not, but juries love patterns." He left her alone with the hum of the fluorescent lights and the metallic taste of fear. For the first time, she wondered if this was the universe's punishment, saving one life and losing her own twice over. Liam watched the news from a cheap motel outside Baton Rouge. The anchor's voice was flat. "Sarah Monroe faces a possible death sentence after violating parole and killing her attorney, Robert Hale." He turned off the TV and punched the wall hard enough to split the skin on his knuckles. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He pulled out the files he'd stolen from Hale's briefcase before the fight, the ones he hadn't dared open until now. There were receipts, correspondence, and one sealed envelope labeled Project Dove. Inside, lab reports from St. Catherine's Hospital, falsified patient deaths, forged signatures. And one more name, Detective Alan Pierce, listed as a paid contractor. Liam froze. Pierce hadn't been a hero. He'd been one of them. Hale hadn't killed him. Someone inside the department had. Sarah had been framed from the beginning. He drove straight to the federal courthouse with the files clutched to his chest. The clerk looked up, startled, as he slammed them onto the counter. "These prove she's innocent. You have to show them to the judge." "Sir, you'll need to speak with her public defender." "There is no public defender. She fired them all because they were on the same payroll." Security escorted him out. The world didn't care about truth. It cared about closure. That night, sitting in his car outside the courthouse, he whispered, "Mom, I'm sorry I didn't believe you." Back in prison, Sarah's health had started to fail. Stress, malnutrition, guilt. It all blended into a dull ache behind her ribs. Each day blurred into the next until the only way she measured time was by the letters she wrote to Liam, the letters the warden never mailed. "If I could turn back the clock, I'd still pick you up from that car. I'd still hold you, still lie, still love you. Because even if love ruins you, at least it means you were alive once." She folded each one carefully, hiding them under her mattress like prayers too fragile for the air. A month later, Liam got the call. "Mr. Cross, this is Nurse Henderson from Holbrook. Your mother collapsed during transport. She's stable. For now." He was on the next bus. When he reached the infirmary, Sarah lay pale and small against the white sheets. Tubes, machines, a body that looked like it had already given up. Her eyes fluttered open when he touched her hand. "You came," she whispered. "I found the files. I can prove everything. The hospital, Pierce, Hale, it's all there." She smiled faintly. "You were always a fighter." "I'm not letting them kill you." She squeezed his fingers. "Then promise me one thing. Anything. When they reopen the case, don't save me. Save the others they hurt. Make sure no one else disappears like your mother did." "Mom." "Promise." He nodded through the tears. "I promise." Outside the room, a marshal waited. "Time's up." As they let him out, he turned once more. Sarah was still watching him, a small, tired smile on her face. And in that look, he finally saw it. Not guilt, not weakness, but peace. The kind that only comes when a person's done fighting. That night, an anonymous envelope slid under the door of a local newsroom. Inside, the Project Dove files, Sarah's prison letters, and one final page in shaky handwriting. Truth outlives every lie. Sarah Monroe.
The morning the story broke, every newsroom in the country went quiet for a heartbeat before the chaos began. Exclusive. Documents link major pharmaceutical company to deaths of trial patients. Convicted nurse may have been framed. The anchor's voice shook slightly. Sources close to the investigation say the files were mailed anonymously. The sender remains unknown. Liam watched from a diner booth, coffee untouched, the TV reflecting in the window beside him. Sarah's prison photo filled the screen, her face worn but steady, eyes full of something that looked like grace. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps within hours. Protesters followed. Signs appeared. Free Sarah Monroe. Truth isn't a crime. For the first time in 20 years, strangers were fighting for her instead of against her. Inside Holbrook, Sarah could hear the noise even through the concrete walls. Guards whispered in the corridors. The warden looked nervous. Her cell door opened. A woman in a gray suit stood there. Assistant Attorney General Valerie Chen. "Mrs. Monroe," she said quietly, "we've reopened your case. The evidence submitted this morning is substantial." Sarah didn't speak. She just closed her eyes and whispered, "He did it." 3 days later, Liam testified before a federal inquiry. The cameras, the microphones, the packed courtroom, it all blurred until he heard his own voice steadying itself. "My mother spent 20 years paying for other people's crimes. She lied to protect me, but the real monsters wore lab coats and suits. She saved my life and I let her believe it ruined hers." When he stepped off the stand, reporters shouted questions, flashbulbs burst, but all he wanted was to get back to the hospital. That evening, Valerie Chen walked into Sarah's room with a folder in her hands. "The governor has issued a full pardon, pending formal exoneration. You're free to go, Mrs. Monroe." Sarah stared at her like the words were in another language. "Free?" She smiled softly. "Sometimes the truth takes a while to catch up." The prison gates opened to a storm of cameras. Flashes burst like lightning, and behind them, Liam. He stepped forward hesitantly, unsure if he even had the right anymore. Sarah's chains were gone, but she still moved like they were there. When she saw him, she stopped. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she whispered, "You kept your promise." He shook his head. "Not yet. I still have work to do." She smiled through tears. "Then let's finish it together." They hugged, awkward at first, then desperate, the kind of embrace that tried to make up for every letter unsent, every visit denied. The crowd cheered, but the sound barely reached them. It was just mother and son holding each other in the rain. Over the next months, the investigation tore through the industry. Executives resigned, arrests followed. A Senate hearing broadcast Sarah's story nationwide, the nurse who saved a stranger's baby and paid with her freedom. She refused interviews. She just wanted silence, the kind that didn't echo with sirens or cell doors. Liam took a job at a nonprofit researching medical ethics. Every speech he gave began the same way. "My mother taught me that truth isn't loud. It's patient. It waits until you're ready to listen." But truth also carries a cost. Sarah's health never recovered. Years of stress had left her heart too fragile. One quiet morning, she didn't wake up. The nurse who found her said she looked peaceful, like someone who'd finally forgiven the world.
At her memorial, Liam read from one of her hidden letters. "If love is a crime, I'm guilty. If truth is a war, then you were my peace." He folded the page and whispered, "You saved me twice." By nightfall, candles lined the church steps. Strangers lit them one by one, patients, nurses, mothers, each flame a small apology from a world that had waited too long to believe her.
The night after the memorial, Liam couldn't sleep. The apartment still smelled faintly of the lavender candle his mother used to light on Sundays. Her Bible sat open on the table, a folded note tucked between the pages of Psalms. He opened it slowly, half expecting it to crumble in his hands. "If you're reading this, it means I finally found rest. Don't let the pain make you small, son. Don't hide from the world the way I did. Take what they meant for punishment and turn it into mercy. Mom." He pressed the paper to his chest and sat there until sunrise. 6 months later, the world had moved on. The news had found new scandals, new villains. But Liam hadn't stopped. He founded the Monroe Foundation, a small organization that offered legal and emotional support to wrongfully convicted caregivers. It started in a rented office with 2 desks and a borrowed printer. Now, volunteers answered calls from across the country: nurses, social workers, foster parents, people crushed under systems too blind to see them. Every time he spoke to someone on the helpline, he heard his mother's voice in his head. "If you hear a baby crying in the dark, you don't walk away." That line became the Foundation's motto. On the first anniversary of her death, he returned to the pier where everything had begun. The wind came off the water, sharp and cold. He carried a small box, her old hospital badge, the baby bracelet, and the letters she'd written but never mailed. He set the box on the water and whispered, "You gave me a life twice. I'll spend the rest of it giving others the same." The tide took the box gently, spinning it away until it disappeared. Weeks later, a letter arrived at the Foundation's office. No return address, just careful handwriting. "You don't know me, but 20 years ago, your mother treated my daughter during the drug trials at St. Catherine's. She saved her life. We never forgot." Inside was a photograph of a young nurse holding a smiling toddler. Sarah Monroe. Liam traced her face with his thumb, smiling through the ache. The world had called her a criminal, but history would remember her as what she truly was: a healer who refused to stop saving people, even when it cost her everything. That evening, he walked out to the front steps of the Foundation. Volunteers were packing up, the street quiet. He looked up at the sky, the same shade of gray as the night she'd found him, and whispered, "We did it, Mom." A breeze lifted the edges of the Foundation's sign. For a heartbeat, it felt like the wind itself was answering. The courthouse clock struck noon. The same building where a judge once said guilty now hosted an award ceremony for humanitarian service. Liam stood at the podium, sunlight spilling through the tall windows. Cameras clicked softly, but the noise faded as he began to speak. 20 years ago, a woman was condemned for loving too deeply. She wasn't perfect. She'd lied, she broke rules, but she never stopped choosing compassion over comfort. Today, I accept this honor not for her mistakes, but for her mercy. He paused,
steadying his voice. Her name was Sarah Monroe. She taught me that justice without grace is just another kind of cruelty. The audience rose to its feet. The applause washed over him like waves, but he barely heard it. He could almost feel her hand on his shoulder, light, familiar, forgiving. After the ceremony, he walked alone down the courthouse steps, the same steps where they'd once dragged her away in chains. He looked back once, smiled, and whispered, "We kept the promise." A single white feather drifted down from the sky, catching the sunlight as it landed on the pavement at his feet. He picked it up, smiled faintly, and tucked it into his jacket pocket. That night, the lights at the Monroe Foundation burned late. A new volunteer, a young nurse, sat across from him filling out forms. She glanced up shyly. "I heard about your mom," she said. "She sounds like she was amazing." Liam smiled. "She still is." The girl nodded. "Sometimes I wonder if we ever really lose people like that." He looked past her to the framed photograph on the wall. Sarah in her scrubs, smiling, eyes bright. Beneath it, their motto read, "If you hear a baby crying in the dark, you don't walk away." Liam whispered, almost to himself, "No, we just carry their light forward." The camera would pull back slowly here, the office windows glowing against the city night, the feather resting beside Sarah's photograph. A woman who gave everything to save one life. A son who spent the rest of his own saving others. And somewhere, maybe in a place no lens could reach, her voice, soft, proud, and unbroken. "You're safe now."